What would you do if the most powerful woman in the country left her blind daughter alone in a crowded cafe for hours just to see who would care? This isn't just a story about kindness. It's a story about power, guilt, and a mother willing to manipulate her own child to protect her secrets. But when one struggling waitress dared to break the rules and offer comfort, she didn't just change a life, she uncovered a lie that could bring down an empire. Stay with us, because what began as a simple act of compassion turns into a battle for truth, freedom, and the soul of a forgotten child. If this story moved you, even just a little, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful and emotional narratives that reveal the extraordinary impact of everyday choices. And we want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed a small act of kindness spark a big change? Share your story in the comments below and help us build a community where compassion still matters. Because sometimes the smallest light shines the farthest. Leona Marsh wiped down the polished marble counter of Café Illume, her gaze darting toward the antique clock mounted on the back wall. Nearly 4:45. Her shift wasn't over for another 2 hours, and her feet already ached. The scent of espresso and vanilla hung in the air, but it didn't mask the knot tightening in her chest. She slipped her phone out of her apron pocket and glanced at the latest voicemail. "Ms. Marsh, this is your third notice. Your rent is overdue. We need payment by Friday or we'll proceed with eviction." Her jaw clenched. She deleted the message without listening to the end. No time for panic. Not here, not now. She glanced across the room, where baristas in crisp black aprons served customers who ordered matcha by name and wore sunglasses indoors. Then she saw her. A girl, no older than 10, sat alone at a corner table by the window. Straight posture, pale hands exploring the table cautiously. Designer coat, oversized sunglasses, and a single braid trailing down her shoulder. There was no drink, no food, just a missing Braille menu that should have been there. Leona narrowed her eyes. Something was off. "Table 7? She asked Kevin, the cafe manager, who was furiously typing on his phone. "VIP, Langford kid, don't touch." "She's been there for 20 minutes. Alone." Kevin didn't look up. "She's waiting for her mother, Celeste Langford. You know who that is?" "Yeah," Leona muttered. "Unfortunately." Kevin finally glanced up. "Don't get involved. Not your business. You're still on probation, remember?" She did, all too well. But as she looked back toward the girl, now biting her lip and whispering to herself, "Mommy, come back soon," something deep in Leona stirred. The sound of shattering glass broke the cafe's stillness. A flower vase had tipped and spilled across the table. Water soaked the girl's pristine dress as she fumbled blindly with napkins. Gasps echoed. "She's making a mess. Where is her parent?" Leona didn't hesitate. She crossed the floor quickly, ignoring Kevin's sharp hiss of "Leona" behind her. Kneeling beside the girl, she spoke gently. "Hi there. Looks like this table got a little wild, huh?" The girl froze. "I'm Leona. I work here. Want a hand?" "I knocked it over," the girl whispered. "Mom's going to be mad. It was just a vase. It happens. I didn't even see it." Her voice trembled. Leona soaked the table with a cloth and offered her a kind smile. "Well, you're lucky. The queen of invisible messes. Can I bring you something? Hot chocolate? A snack?" "I'm not allowed to order until she comes back," the girl said. "She left when the clock said 3. Leona's heart dropped. "It's almost 5. The girl's lip quivered, but she nodded. "What's your name?" Leona asked. "Ivy," she whispered. "Well, Ivy, I think you deserve hot chocolate. I won't tell if you don't." For the first time, a tiny smile flickered across the girl's face. Leona returned with a tray. Hot. Chocolate with cinnamon, a ham and cheese croissant, and a sugar cookie shaped like a star. She described each item gently as she placed them in front of Ivy, guiding her hands to the edges of the plate. "Careful, it's warm, but not scalding," she said. "The cookies at 12 o'clock, sandwich at 6. "You describe things differently," Ivy said. "Most people talk like I'm stupid. My little brother's blind. I've had practice." "You have a brother?" 16. His name's Miles. Plays piano like a dream. Ivy's fingers paused. I like music too. Do you read Braille? I do. I love books about stars. They feel big. I bet they do, Leona said, smiling. Like music you can't hear but know is still playing. Ivy laughed softly. That's exactly it. In that moment, the sterile cafe melted away. There were no rules, just two people sharing a truth the world often ignored. The cafe doors opened with a faint chime. Leona didn't see her at first, but a hush fell over the room like a sudden storm. Kevin rushed forward, his expression panicked. Miss Langford, welcome back. I apologize. Celeste Langford didn't respond. She moved like ice through water, elegant, silent, chilling. She stopped at table 7. Ivy, she said. Mum! Ivy's smile lit up. Leona was so nice. She brought me cocoa and told me about stars. Celeste's gaze fell to the empty cup, the half-eaten cookie, then to Leona. Leona Marsh, she said coolly. Leona's stomach dropped. Yes, ma'am. You served my daughter without permission. She was alone for 2 hours, Leona said. She was scared. Celeste's tone didn't change. How much do I owe for the meal? Nothing, Leona replied evenly. It was on the house. A pause. Let's go, Ivy. As they left, Ivy turned back. Can we come back tomorrow? Leona said she'd teach me the difference between cappuccino and macchiato. Celeste didn't answer, but she looked at Leona one last time, memorizing her face. Kevin cornered her in the back hallway. You disobeyed. A direct order. That woman could ruin this place. She left her daughter alone, Leona said. I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see that. Kevin shook his head. You're fired. She didn't argue. There was no point. That night, her apartment felt colder than usual. A single lamp lit the living room, where Miles sat at the piano, fingers gently testing a melody. I guess it finally happened, Leona murmured, dropping her apron onto the couch. He didn't stop playing. You helped a kid. That's never the wrong thing. I'm getting evicted. We're behind on everything. I lost the only job that had regular tips. Miles turned. You said something once, that everything happens for a reason. Yeah, and I stopped believing that. The intercom buzzed. A clipped voice came through. Ms. Marsh, I'm Margaret Chun, legal assistant to Celeste Langford. Ms. Langford would like to meet with you. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. Leona stared at the speaker, then at Miles. He raised a brow. Maybe everything still happens for a reason. Leona had never felt so underdressed in her life. The marble floors of Bennett Technologies shimmered beneath her scuffed thrift store flats. Glass elevators whooshed silently past, carrying tailored executives to places she couldn't pronounce. A receptionist with porcelain skin and clipped syllables scanned her ID like it might shatter on contact. Ms. Marsh, the woman said coolly, you'll be taken to the 45th floor. As the elevator rose, Leona caught her. Reflection in the mirrored wall. She smoothed her hand over her neatly tied curls, adjusted the single button on her blazer, and practiced a breath she hoped looked like confidence. But inside, her pulse throbbed. When the doors opened, a sleek corridor stretched out in silence. A woman in a navy pantsuit gestured her forward. Celeste Langford is expecting you. The office was expansive and sterile, with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a conquest. Celeste stood at the far end, arms crossed, spine impossibly straight. Ms. Marsh, she said without turning around, you're punctual. That's rare. Leona stepped inside. You summoned me. I figured lateness would be inadvisable. Celeste finally faced her, her expression unreadable. Tell me, why did you help my daughter? Leona didn't flinch. Because she was alone. Because she was scared. Because no one else did. Celeste studied her. You disobeyed your manager. He wanted me to ignore a child. I refused. A flicker of amusement crossed Celeste's mouth. Not many people defy instruction in my world. Sit. Leona hesitated, then sat. Celeste moved behind her desk, hands steepled. I left Ivy alone on purpose, to see who would intervene. Leona stared. You're joking. It's a behavioral test. We've done it before. Controlled environment, public setting, predictable responses. You used your own daughter as a lab rat. Celeste's eyes didn't waver. Ivy knows it's a game. She didn't look like she was playing. She looked terrified. Celeste leaned back. 17 people passed her, staff, customers, none approached. You did. Leona stood abruptly. If this is your idea of parenting, I'm done. I haven't offered you anything yet. I don't need hush money. Celeste smiled. Everyone needs something. She opened a drawer and slid a folder across the desk. Leona didn't touch it. Inside is compensation for wrongful termination, plus a non-disclosure agreement. You think you can buy my silence? No, Celeste said calmly. I think I can buy your cooperation, which is different. Leona's fists tightened at her sides. Keep your folder. She turned and walked to the door. Your brother's music, Celeste called after her. He's exceptional. Leona stopped, her heart thudding. I do my homework, Ms. Marsh. I know everything about the people I bring close. The elevator hadn't even closed when the same assistant from earlier appeared beside her. Ms. Langford asked me to walk you out personally, she said, with a neutral tone. They moved in silence until they reached the lobby. As they exited the building, a black car pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out. She requests one more word. Leona hesitated. Her instincts screamed at her, but so did her bank account. The back door opened. Celeste sat inside, one leg crossed over the other, a thin envelope in her gloved hand. Before you refuse again, hear the full offer. I'm listening, Leona said, standing outside. The car. I want you to become Ivy's live-in companion, tutor, guide, protector, whatever role she needs. Leona blinked. Why me? Because she asked about you. Because she lit up in a way I haven't seen in years. And because she trusts you. Leona didn't move. That's not an answer. Celeste held her gaze. Because you're genuine. And because I need someone who sees her the way she wants to be seen. And you can't do that. I'm not asking for judgment. I'm offering opportunity. She extended the envelope. Inside, you'll find the contract, salary, and terms. Leona took it, slowly. And if I say no? Celeste's mouth twitched. You won't. Later that night, Leona sat across from Miles at their kitchen table, the envelope still unopened between them. Let me guess, he said, tapping the corner of the envelope. It smells like rich people and bad ideas. Leona smirked. More like desperation disguised as generosity. Miles leaned forward. But she offered you a job. Yeah, a big one. And it feels like walking into a lion's den with nothing but a smile. Miles paused. Is Ivy in there? In where? In the lion's den. Leona hesitated. Yeah, then maybe she needs someone who's not afraid of lions. Leona looked down, thumb brushing the edge of the envelope. She scares me, Miles. She should. But you scare people too, Leo. You just don't know it. She met his eyes. You're smart, honest, and you don't play games. That's threatening. He stood and kissed the top of her head. Take the job, but don't lose yourself inside it. 2 days later, Leona stood in front of the Langford estate, suitcase in hand. The mansion loomed behind wrought iron gates, all glass and sharp edges, cold against the morning light. A guard confirmed her name, then buzzed her through. A woman named Alice, efficient and polite, showed her to her quarters, an elegant suite tucked away near Ivy's wing. Celeste wasn't home. Ivy was. She was sitting on the floor of her room, running her fingers across a braille version of The Little Prince. Hi, Ivy, Leona said softly. The girl's head turned instantly. You came, Leona smiled. Of course I did. You promised me a cocoa quiz, remember? Ivy laughed. And you said you'd teach me about cinnamon swirls. Still on the schedule. Ivy crawled to her knees and reached out. Leona took her hand. This place is beautiful, she said. It's big, Ivy corrected. Not always beautiful. Her fingers brushed Leona's. But it just got better. The scent of chamomile and cinnamon wafted through Ivy's room as Leona carried a silver tray toward the small sitting area near the window. Ivy sat cross-legged on a textured mat, fingers gliding over a raised astronomy chart. Ready for today's cocoa quiz? Leona asked. Ivy's head tilted. You remembered. Of course. We've got 3 drinks. Cinnamon swirl, peppermint mocha, and regular cocoa. You'll guess with just your nose. Challenge accepted. Ivy grinned, reaching her hands out. Expectantly, Leona placed the cups in front of her one by one and watched as Ivy sniffed carefully. The one in the middle is cinnamon, correct. And the one on the left is peppermint. 2 for 2. I told you I had a super sniffer, Ivy said proudly. They laughed together, light, genuine. The moment shimmered with something rare, safety. Leona leaned back on her heels. You're good at this. Ever think about being a chef? No, Ivy said, but I think smells are like memories. Even if you can't see them, you know they mean something. That's beautiful, Leona said softly. Just like stars you feel instead of see. Ivy turned toward the sound of her voice. You get it, Leona smiled. Yeah, I do. Leona didn't hear the footsteps until they stopped behind her. She turned. Celeste stood at the threshold, perfectly composed in a cream suit. Her ice blue eyes unreadable. How's the training? Celeste asked, her voice smooth. Ivy's teaching me more than I'm teaching her, Leona replied, rising to her feet. Celeste crossed the room slowly, her gaze flicking over the cups on the table. You've introduced sugar. It was a game. She asked for it. Ivy has a strict diet. She also has a soul, Leona said before she could stop herself. A tense silence fell. I don't appreciate defiance, Ms. Marsh, Celeste said coolly. I'm not defying you, Leona said. I'm building trust. Celeste narrowed her eyes, then turned toward Ivy. Has Ms. Marsh been helpful? She's amazing, Ivy said without hesitation. She lets me be me. Celeste was silent for a long beat. Then she nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and left the room. Ivy leaned close. She's listening even when she's gone. Leona gave a faint laugh. I figured. 3 days later, Leona returned from town with a surprise. Miles. Ivy sat at the garden bench, Braille poetry book in hand, when Leona approached. Ivy, I brought someone I want you to meet. Miles stepped forward. Hi, I'm Leona's brother. I hear you like music. Ivy perked up. Do you play? He doesn't just play, Leona said. He makes pianos fall in love. Miles chuckled and took a seat at the white garden piano nestled among the trees. With gentle hands, he began to play, a soft, winding melody that filled the air like mist. Ivy's breath caught. What is that? Something I wrote last winter, Miles said. I call it First Snow in Silence. Ivy touched her chest. It feels like being warm under a blanket. Leona watched the moment unfold like a painting. 2 blind children connecting not with sight, but with sound, instinct, and honesty. From a distance, Celeste watched from the balcony, her face unreadable. Later that evening, Leona passed the laundry room and heard hushed voices. 2 housekeepers folding linens and murmuring. Ivy's different since that new girl arrived, one whispered. The child always was bright, too bright for her own good. It's a tragedy what happened to her. She wasn't always blind, you know. Leona paused. What do you mean? The other asked. The first one hushed her. Keep your voice down. It wasn't from birth. There was an accident, but it's not in the papers. You'll never find it, and no one's allowed to talk about it. Leona leaned against the wall, heart pounding. They weren't just rumors. There was something buried under the pristine floors and polished banisters. And Leona was sure Celeste knew exactly what it was. That night, as Leona helped Ivy organize her braille, e-books, the girl hesitated near her closet. There's something I want to show you, Ivy said. Leona paused. Okay. Ivy felt for the corner of the closet, then pulled back a panel in the wall, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside, a leather-bound diary and a USB stick in a velvet case. My Uncle Trevor helped me hide it, Ivy said. He said one day I'd need it. Leona's breath hitched. Why are you showing me this now? Because I trust you, Ivy said. And because I think I'm not supposed to. Know certain things, but I feel them. Leona took the items gently. Do you know what's on the drive? No, but I think it has the truth about the night I lost my sight. Leona stared at the stick, her hand trembling. Ivy, are you sure? Ivy nodded. I want to see, even if I can't. Leona waited until Ivy was asleep. The girl's steady breathing was the only sound in the room as moonlight filtered through the curtains. With one last glance to be sure she was undisturbed, Leona slipped the USB stick into her laptop. The folder opened instantly. Scans of old police reports, photos of twisted metal, medical evaluations dated 5 years ago, Ivy's name, Celeste's name. But the most damning piece was a suppressed news article. CEO Celeste Langford involved in private car crash, investigation sealed. Leona's heart sank. A second headline followed. Never published. Texting behind the wheel? Eyewitness claims. CEO distracted before collision that blinded young daughter. Then came the doctor's evaluations, pages of them detailing treatments recommended but never pursued, retinal regeneration trials, cognitive rehab, therapies marked denied by Guardian. Celeste had blocked every option, buried every trace, lied. Leona sat back, trembling. She thought of Ivy's quiet questions, of how the girl always sensed more than she said. Ivy didn't lose her sight by chance, Leona whispered aloud. She was kept in the dark by her own mother. The next morning, Leona called the one person she hadn't dared contact before. Trevor Langford, said a cautious voice on the line. How did you get this number? This is Leona Marsh. I'm living with Ivy. She showed me something. I need to talk to you. In person. Silence crackled on the other end. Come alone. East Park, Stonebridge, noon. Trevor looked exactly how she imagined. Rugged, tired, wary. A 5 o'clock shadow clung to his jaw, and his clothes looked like they hadn't seen a boardroom in years. She still uses the drive, he asked, nodding at the USB in her hand. She trusted me, Leona said. I've seen what your sister did, he sighed. And now you know why I left. She blinded her child, Leona said, then made sure she stayed blind. She didn't mean to. At least not the first part, Trevor replied. But the cover-up, the denial of treatment, that's guilt, that's fear. Why didn't you go to the press? I tried. You think the media's free? With Celeste's reach, the judge sealed the case. The doctors were bought. One tried to speak up. His license was pulled a week later. Leona looked him in the eye. She said the crash was a test, but it wasn't. She's been running ever since. Trevor nodded grimly. And Ivy deserves more than the prison she calls home. That evening, over dinner, Celeste barely touched her fork. Ivy and I have a charity appointment tomorrow for the Bennett Foundation's Blind Youth Initiative. Leona's pulse jumped. I didn't see anything about it on the schedule, she said, feigning curiosity. It's last minute, Celeste replied smoothly. Private tour. Don't worry about it. But Leona did worry. As Ivy slept, Leona took the small tracker Miles had mailed her the week before. Just in case you need to find someone who doesn't want to be found, he joked. She slid it into the lining of Ivy's backpack and whispered, This is just to keep you safe, Stargirl. The next morning, she watched the black Mercedes pull away from the Langford estate, Ivy sitting quietly in the back, seat beside her mother. Within minutes, the tracker pinged. They weren't headed downtown. They were going north, far north, into wooded back roads Leona didn't recognize. She grabbed her coat and dialed Trevor. They're not going to a charity meeting, she said. I'm already in the car, he replied. Text me the coordinates. The GPS led them to a gated facility nestled deep in the woods, marked only by a sign that read, Anderson Research Institute, private access only. They parked under the trees and crept toward the perimeter, peering through the reinforced windows. Inside, Ivy sat on an exam table. A white-coated doctor hovered near her, preparing something. Celeste stood nearby, arms crossed, expression blank. She's running another diagnostic, Trevor muttered. She does this every 6 months, hires someone to reaffirm there's no hope, no progress. But she only hires doctors she can control. Leona's stomach twisted. So Ivy lives thinking she'll never see again because her mother wants her to? Trevor nodded. Celeste thinks that if Ivy sees again, she'll see the truth, the guilt, the lies. Inside, Ivy tilted her head toward the window, brows furrowed, as if she could feel them watching. Leona stood. This ends now. The security guard barely stepped aside before Leona stormed through the doors. "What are you doing here?" Celeste hissed. "Ivy deserves the truth," Leona snapped. "You brought her here under false pretenses. This is a routine consultation with a doctor you pay to confirm your lies." Celeste's composure cracked for the first time. "I did what I had to," she said. "You did what you had to protect your reputation. But Ivy's the one who's been paying for it. I gave her safety. You gave her silence." Behind them, Ivy spoke quietly. "I always knew." Celeste turned sharply. "Knew what?" "I heard you cry every night after the accident. I heard the whispers. I just didn't understand why you wouldn't let me try to see." Celeste knelt beside her daughter. Her lips trembled. "I thought, if you stayed blind, you'd never have to see what I did to you." Ivy reached out and gently touched her mother's face. "I don't hate you for the truth, Mom. I hate you for hiding it." The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was hollow, like something sacred had cracked open. Trevor placed a hand on Leona's shoulder. "You did what no one else could." Leona looked toward Ivy, who now sat taller than she had since they met. "I just gave her back." "What was hers?" Leona said. "A choice." Ivy sat upright in the exam room, her legs dangling from the paper-lined table. Her fingers worried the hem of her coat as the doctor finished explaining. "There's a 60% chance of partial vision restoration," he said gently. "Not full recovery, but shadow, outline, contrast, maybe even color recognition with time." Celeste stood stiffly in the corner, her arms crossed like a fortress. Ivy turned toward Leona. "Would you do it?" Leona knelt in front of her. "It doesn't matter what I would do. It's your body, your choice." "I'm scared," Ivy whispered. "I know, but you don't have to do it alone." The silence stretched between them until Ivy finally nodded. "I want to try, and I want Leona with me." Celeste inhaled sharply. "You'd let a stranger guide you through this." "She's not a stranger," Ivy said. "She sees me." The surgery was scheduled within days. Leona stayed beside Ivy in the hospital's private suite while Celeste disappeared, silent, unreachable. The night before the procedure, Leona stepped out to find Celeste pacing the hallway, her perfect facade unraveling. "She shouldn't have to do this," Celeste muttered. "She's too young. She's old enough to make a decision about her own body." "You don't understand," Celeste snapped, her voice low. "If she sees again, she'll see me for what I did, for what I am." Leona's voice softened. "Is that what you're afraid of? That she'll hate you?" Celeste met her eyes. "Wouldn't she be right to?" Leona shook her head. "Not if you face it. Not if you finally let her choose something for herself." Celeste looked away, her voice a whisper. "I was trying to protect her." "No," Leona said. "You were trying to protect yourself from the shame." Celeste didn't reply. Leona held Ivy's hand as the anesthetic was administered. The child's lashes fluttered, and then she was still. Hours passed. Miles waited in the lobby, fidgeting with his headphones. Trevor arrived mid-procedure and sat, with Leona in the waiting room, offering quiet solidarity. When the doctor finally emerged, he was smiling. She did, beautifully. Her optic nerve responded well. We'll know more in the next 72 hours. Inside the recovery room, Ivy stirred. Her eyes, uncovered for the first time in years, blinked at the soft light. "I see light," she whispered. Leona's breath caught. "And shadows. There's a window. And you're wearing blue." A sob escaped Leona's throat. "Yes, Ivy. Yes, I am." Celeste
Behind
stood, silent, hand trembling at her side. "She looks like you," Ivy said, still blinking slowly, "but different." Celeste stepped forward and knelt beside the bed. "You're seeing me for the first time." "I always felt you," Ivy said. "Now I just see it." 3 weeks later, Leona sat at a long mahogany table at Bennett Technologies, staring at a contract. Celeste stood at the head of the room, hands folded. "I want you to run the Bennett Foundation," she said simply. "Full control, autonomy, your vision." Leona raised an eyebrow. "You're giving me your name. I'm giving you a platform. You've earned it." "Why me?" Celeste exhaled. Because you saw my daughter when I only saw her blindness, because you saw through me. And what's the catch? There isn't one. Leona hesitated, then signed. That afternoon, she stood outside the newly restructured foundation office, a fresh plaque gleaming beside the door. The Light Project, in partnership with the Bennett Foundation. Director Leona Marsh. Miles met her at the front steps. Director Marsh, he teased. She smiled. It has a nice ring, doesn't it? The foundation's reopening gala was unlike anything the Langford estate had seen. No CEOs, no celebrities, just families, children, artists, advocates. Ivy, now walking with a cane less for necessity than balance, wore a pale lavender dress and a smile that reached her eyes. She stood beside her tactile sculpture, a swan with feathered impressions and a wire frame that shimmered in the light. I call it hope in Braille, she explained to the small crowd, because sometimes we have to feel something before we can really see it. Miles accompanied her on piano. Leona stood at the back, arms crossed, eyes glistening. Celeste approached. She's remarkable, she said. She always was, Leona replied. You just kept her dimmed. And you lit the match, Celeste said, voice cracking. Leona looked at her. So what now? Celeste nodded toward the children. Now we rebuild. As the music swelled and Ivy's hands glided across her creation, Leona whispered to herself, This is what the light between us looks like. Autumn spread its golden breath across the Langford estate, layering the once pristine garden in a soft blanket of leaves. Ivy sat under the pergola with a book of raised poetry in her lap, her cane resting beside her. She wore glasses now, not to hide her eyes, but to protect them from light sensitivity as her vision continued to slowly improve. Inside the house, the atmosphere had changed. Where silence once echoed, warmth now lingered. Ivy's laughter was no longer confined to her bedroom. It floated through the halls like music. Leona stood at the window, sipping tea, watching the girl trace each word with her fingers, her eyes glancing at the blurred shapes of branches overhead. She's reading aloud again, Celeste said behind her, stepping into the room. And you're here to hear it, Leona replied, her tone gentler than before. Celeste gave a slow nod. Dr. LaRue says Ivy's making progress beyond expectation. She's making progress because no one's telling her what she can't do anymore. Celeste didn't argue. Instead, she lowered herself into the chair beside Leona and picked up a pamphlet, Mindful Parenting and Healing Through Repair. I started therapy last week, she said without looking up. Group sessions with other mothers. Leona smiled faintly. That's something. I told them the truth. For the first time, Leona raised her mug. To beginnings, Celeste clinked hers against it. To seeing. Trevor arrived at the estate that afternoon, his car crunching across the gravel drive. Ivy greeted him at the door, nearly knocking him over with a hug. You're getting strong, he laughed. I've been practicing, she beamed. He ruffled her hair and looked toward the house. She in there? Leona nodded. She asked for you. Trevor walked through the grand entryway and into the sitting room where Celeste waited, her shoulders stiff, hands clasped in her lap like a student about to be scolded. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, I still remember the first night after the crash. You sat at Ivy's bed, whispering apologies she couldn't hear. I didn't know how to face her, Celeste murmured. No, Trevor said. You didn't know how to face yourself. Celeste swallowed. You should hate me. I did, he said quietly. But hate takes energy, and I think Ivy deserves all of mine. Celeste's voice cracked. I wish I could undo it. You can't, Trevor replied, but you can keep showing up. She nodded, her eyes brimming. That's what I'm trying to do. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let that be enough, for now. The Light Project's first public showcase was held in the Wellington Academy Rotunda. Glass chandeliers lit up the long hall, now filled not with suits and speeches, but with children and creativity, textured sculptures, Braille poetry, music echoing from a grand piano in the corner, played by Miles, whose fingers danced with purpose. Leona moved through the crowd, greeting families, answering questions, laughing when a girl tried to teach her how to use a Braille typewriter and failed hilariously. Ivy stood proudly beside her sculpture, a pair of bronze hands cradling a globe etched with stars. She made it with her fingers and memory, one volunteer explained. No visual reference, just imagination. Celeste stood off to the side, watching. "She's not mine anymore," she said quietly to Leona. "She never was," Leona replied. "You were just the first to hold her, but she's always belonged to herself." Celeste looked down. "Thank you for not letting her stay in the dark." Leona turned to her. "You did that too, when you let her choose." After the event, as the children ran through the garden behind the academy, a little boy tugged on Celeste's hand. He had been part of the new sensory storytelling program. "Are you blind too?" he asked, innocently. Celeste knelt down beside him, her designer shoes sinking into the grass. "No," she said, "but I used to be, in a different way." The boy furrowed his brow. "How?" Celeste looked toward Ivy and Leona, standing together near the piano. "Because I thought power made me strong, but it just made me scared." The boy nodded, not fully understanding, but satisfied. Ivy walked up moments later carrying a wrapped canvas. "I made this for you," she said, holding it out. Celeste unwrapped it, carefully. It was a painting, swirls of texture and color, blues layered with metallic brushstrokes and rough fabric beneath them. "To help you see what you almost missed," Ivy whispered. Celeste pressed the canvas to her chest. "I see it now," she said. That night, after the guests had gone, the music faded and the laughter quieted. Leona and Ivy took a walk along the stone path behind the Langford estate. The stars were out, though dim through the soft clouds. "They don't shine as bright as they used to," Ivy said. "You think that's a bad thing?" Leona asked. Ivy shrugged. "Not really. I think I just notice different things now." They walked in silence until Ivy spoke again. "You changed my life." Leona looked down at her. "You changed mine first." They reached the bench near the reflecting pool and sat. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Ivy asked. Leona smiled. "I miss who I was trying to be, but not who I actually was. I think I used to be small," Ivy said, "even when I tried to be big." "And now?" Leona asked. Ivy leaned against her shoulder. "Now I just feel real." A pause. Then Ivy asked, "Do you think I'll ever see perfectly?" Leona looked at the sky, the dim shapes of branches, the soft rustle of leaves. "I think perfect is overrated," she said, "but I think you'll always see exactly what you need." The wind blew gently. The stars blinked quietly above them, and in that moment, they didn't need anything else. What if the person we fear the most isn't the one hiding a secret, but the one who forces us to face it? In the light between us, a simple act of kindness unravels a web of guilt, control, and buried truth, revealing that sometimes the ones who appear to have it all are the ones most in need of redemption. But here's the real question. If you discovered that the person trying to help you once destroyed your life, would you still accept their second chance? Let us know in the comments. What would you choose, forgiveness or justice? If stories like this move you, challenge you, or make you think twice about the hidden stories behind power and compassion, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next emotional journey. And if this story touched your heart, share it. You never know who might need a reminder that empathy can change lives in ways money never could.